champion of your company is the pinnacle, a shining example for everyone in the locker room to become. Or at least that's what they should be. Hi, I'm Mikey Nichols from the Breaking Down the Ring podcast and Avid Pro Wrestling, and in this video we are going to break down the top 10 worst champions of all time. Number 10, Vince McMahon, the owner of WWE, the creator of WrestleMania, and the single biggest influence on the entire pro wrestling industry. Vince McMahon has also partaken in many moments that have left a bad taste in people's mouths. One such moment was on a 1999 episode of SmackDown, in which the chairman won the World Wrestling Entertainment Championship from Triple H. I mean, sure, there was plenty of interference to accomplish this, with Vince ultimately being dragged on top of an unconscious Triple H for a 3 count courtesy of a stunner from his once longtime foe, Stone Cold Steve Austin. While not as bad as some on this list, we're looking at you, David Arquette. This is deemed controversial because Vince is not an actor, performer, or wrestler, and is also the head of creative, meaning he essentially booked himself to win the company's top prize while telling his performers they need to grab the proverbial brass ring. Thankfully, he learned from this and never did anything like it again. Number 9, Jeff Jarrett. The soon-to-be Hall of Famer Double J was an above-average in-ring performer and an entertaining mainstay of WWE's mid-card division in the mid to late 90s, which in turn made his eventual runs as WCW and TNA NWA World Champion seem too hard for us to believe. Generally, it takes time for fans to accept any mid-card talent working their way into the main event, but in Jarrett's case, he never was truly embraced. And while his family's contribution to the industry, as well as creating TNA and giving early exposure to some of WWE's current top talent like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe shouldn't go unnoticed, his runs as champion in WCW and TNA always seemed like something we're forced to tolerate, opposed to anything that fans were actually invested into watching. Number 8, Mideon. The character played by Dennis Knight had a very interesting career in WWE. He was once a part of the tag team known as the Godwins, which turned into Southern Justice before ultimately becoming the character of Mideon, a lower card heel used to help fill out the roster of Undertaker's Ministry of Darkness stable in the late 90s. Though often forgotten, Mideon also had a reign as European champion. What makes this reign remarkable is the asinine way in which he obtained the championship. After the stable of the corporation joined with the ministry to become the corporate ministry, Mideon was in a backstage segment with none other than Shane McMahon. During the segment, Mideon was looking for a belt to hold up his pants, so he asked Shane if he had a belt to hold up his pants, and yep, you guessed it, Shane proceeded to open his bag and give him the European Championship. To hold up his pants and all. Number 7, the Mighty Igor. In Vern Gagne's AWA promotion in the 1970s, Mad Dog Vachon had a lengthy run as the heel world champion. During this run, he would occasionally drop the belt to a top babyface or hometown hero before winning the belt back. One such hero was the Mighty Igor, an extremely popular yet mid-card talent. Sadly, his reign was brief and Vachon quickly captured back the championship before facing much higher profile talents. Igor would go on to have a decent career as a mid-carder, but would never again reach such heights as the title reign is often forgotten about or remembered as a complete fluke. Number 6, Jacqueline. Recent WWE Hall of Famer Jacqueline is often cited as the first ever black women's champion after defeating Sable for the WWE Women's title in the late 90s. And while that fact may be nice, it might be the only memorable thing about her title reign. This wasn't her fault, though. There were plenty of issues with reintroducing the women's title at this point because of the incredible lack of depth on their women's roster. The division primarily consisted of Sable, Jacqueline, and occasionally Luna Vachon, and that's pretty much it. Likewise, her win came in with its share of controversy when Mark Merrow held Sable's foot down, allowing for Jackie to make the cover in a short 3-minute encounter. Number 5, the Great Khali. Great Khali is a massive celebrity in his home country of India, and he is a legit 7-foot 3-inch giant. So it's no surprise that Vince McMahon decided to give him a push as the world champion in 2007 when Edge was forced to vacate the title due to a pectoral injury. Khali won the title in a 20-man battle royal. While Khali's stature made him stand out, he was very clumsy and just in general pretty bad in the ring. You could argue that he is perhaps the worst in-ring wrestler who has ever won the title. Because of this, ratings declined, and he would drop the title to Batista only 2 months later. Number 4, Roddy Piper and Ric Flair. Calm down, calm down, calm down, calm down. Let us start by saying this. We all unanimously love Roddy Piper and the Nature Boy Ric Flair because they're two of the absolute biggest legends and names in the history of pro wrestling. However, their reign as the WWE Raw World Tag Team Champions in 2006 is nothing to remember and is probably best forgotten. They won the championships at the Cyber Sunday pay-per-view after surprising everyone and beating the Spirit Squad. Had this been 20 years sooner, it would have been a huge deal. Even 10 years sooner would have been pretty cool. But in 2006, Flair's run was finally coming to an end, and Piper, let's just say he looked bad. Like really bad. Unfortunately, the reign was little more than a cheap pop for that one night. We still love the two of them, but let's please, if you haven't already, forget this ever happened. Number 3, Jack Swagger. Jack Swagger might have been the worst and most forgettable title run of nearly anyone on this list. Swagger is a talented guy, and it's hard to pinpoint where exactly things went wrong. He won the Money in the Bank briefcase at WrestleMania 26 in 2010 and cashed in later that year on an episode of SmackDown, defeating a beat-up Chris Jericho to become the World Heavyweight Champion. This should have launched his career, but for some reason, things never took off, and his title reign is seen as one of the biggest flop pushes in recent memory. While he did have some success later with manager Zeb Coulter, he never managed to regain the momentum he once had and was quickly becoming enhancement talent before his eventual release from World Wrestling Entertainment in 2017. Number 2, David Arquette. What can be said that hasn't already been said about this? Arquette is an actor who in the year 2000 recently filmed the movie Ready to Rumble, and then after shooting started showing up on WCW television, which he was then put into storylines. He then eventually got put into a tag match on an episode of WCW Thunder alongside then-champion DDP versus the likes of Eric Bischoff and Jeff Jarrett, with the added stipulation that whoever made the pin in the bout would then become the champion. Arquette pinned Bischoff during the match, which meant he was the newly crowned WCW champion. To be fair to Arquette, he was against this idea as he figured fans would hate it, but writer Vince Russo convinced him it would be good for publicity, and he eventually agreed to go along with it. Unfortunately, Arquette was right, and fans despised the angle, and it's now often cited as one of the main causes for WCW's eventual demise. Number 1, Vince Russo. During the final years of WCW, they were in trouble as the ratings war between them and WWE was no longer close. WWE was just destroying the competition. So, WCW, in a desperate move, brought in the writer Vince Russo, who was credited heavily with the success for the WWE's Attitude Era, to be the head of their creative. As we all know, this didn't work out too well. Russo was responsible for some truly god-awful booking, including what we just mentioned. And finally, as if WCW needed a nail in their coffin to seal their fate, writer Vince Russo won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in a caged heat match with Booker T after Goldberg speared the writer through the side of the cage on an episode of Nitro. The same writer who pitched the idea of Vince McMahon winning the WWE belt in 1999, the same one who made David Arquette WCW champion months prior, had then booked himself to become the WCW World Champion. The company folded less than a year later. So that's it. Did you like it? Do you agree? Leave some comments below and let us know if we missed anybody on that list. We appreciate anyone who subscribes, anyone who likes, and especially everyone who shares. Make sure you check us out on all of our social media, facebook.com/avidprowrestling, or on Twitter @avid_wrestling. You can also check out Breaking Down the Ring on all of the social medias @BDRcast. And make sure you're paying attention because we have more videos coming to you on a weekly basis as much as possible, including original professional wrestling content. Thank you so much for watching, and we are out.